Learning and the impact that learning has on your life.
Yeah.
And I also think in American society, there's this lack of feeling like you're in control because of the
Yeah.
way society boxes people in. And I think it's really important to
Yes.
understand that you are in charge of your learning. You are owning your
100%.
learning.
Yeah.
Um,
You
and
can do that. You're
yes,
allowed to
and
do that. You have permission to do that. You should do that.
right. And I think
Yeah.
sometimes it's hard for people to think that they can make their own choices unless it's a negative thing. And
Mm.
I just don't believe in that anymore. But I did. If you asked me 3 years ago, 4 years ago, I mean, we're very different people even from, I don't know, a month ago.
I was gonna say, right?
And I
Oh,
love
Lord.
that.
Hi, I'm Amber.
And I'm Elayna. We're glad you're here to join us where
Everything is learning. Hi.
hey, how's it going?
Oh, it's going. It's going. How about you?
Yeah, it's going. I'm super
Nice.
pumped about today.
This is kind of exciting, I think.
Yeah,
A little nerve-wracking, but also a little exciting.
this is
Yeah.
going to be so fun.
Yeah.
I'm
I hope
pumped.
so. Me too.
Oh,
Because
by the
that's
way,
yes.
I'm Elayna,
I'm Amber.
and
And yeah.
yeah, we're here. We're here to talk about learning, and we're two people. We're
That's it.
friends,
Yep.
learners. We're children. We're siblings, and we're just on a mish. Oh,
On
I've
a
never said that in my
mish.
life. On a
On
mish.
a
On a mission.
mission.
On a
Yeah.
mission.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we really just want to change the way that people see and live learning, really, right? Like how they see
Yeah.
learning, understand learning, and then just to walk in learning. It's kind of exciting, I think.
Yes.
God, that sounds really cheesy, but whatever. Whatever. I
No,
love a good
it's
cheese.
true.
A good Gouda. Gouda, if you're in Holland, is that where they make that? Anyway, I like some cheese. We'll go with cheesiness. But like we are on a mission. Like that's kind of our goal. I think in our lives, in our careers, and that's kind of what led us to this point. You know what I mean? Just that
Right.
desire to share what we know and what we've learned on our learning journeys and show other people to kind of create a community and help other people know share with people what we know, right? The little bit that we know, but also learn from each other, learn as a community, and go from there and just see what we can do with this, you know?
Right. I
Mm.
think you nailed it. I mean, really,
Nailed it.
we were having conversations and we realized
Yeah.
how helpful these conversations were to us, and we were hoping they'd help others and in our own individual
Right.
paths and careers that we've built and such.
Yep. And
We've
career
been
changes that we've made and all the
huge career
things.
changes,
Yeah.
life changes, learning changes.
Yep.
We realized as we started to share that other people felt what we were sharing was really important and
Yeah.
transformational, which was awesome to hear, but it really wasn't intentional.
Nope.
We just really enjoy helping people and
Yeah.
learning more about ourselves and sharing that with each other. And it just kind
Yep.
of
And learning
came
from and
out to
with each
this.
other. Yeah,
Right.
exactly. Exactly. Yeah, I think I kind of also like the idea of I like being a fly on the wall. You know what I mean?
Mm.
Like, I think
Yep.
there's like, you know me, I'm like a classic wallflower in a lot of situations. So I kind of enjoy just kind of watching and listening and kind of soaking up information or soaking up perspectives and ideas and things. And so I'm kind of, I don't know. I think that's a fun thing, and I hope other people have fun listening to us, I guess. And
Right.
being a fly
Oh
on the
yeah,
wall.
no, I think too one thing that we really learned on this journey, besides that everything is learning and learning is everything,
Right, right.
we've really learned a lot about ourselves and in our experiences.
Yeah,
You
for
know, I've
sure.
been a fly on your wall, you've been a fly on my wall, and
Okay.
we've really enjoyed, like you said, hearing other people's perspectives too,
Yeah.
and learning about that. But yeah, I guess let's just dive right in. Like, how do you define learning, Amber?
So I would say. to me, at its core, and I love the phrase "at its core." That's how I operate, right? Is like,
You'll hear that a lot from
fundamentally, it's
her.
this because I know I've learned in my life, and I'm just, you've learned just it happens this way that like you can have a really good plan, a really good understanding, but there's always fractals off of it, right? I'll always like
Sure.
pieces off of it, but at its core, learning, I think it's like a four-step process. This is how I see it. It's a four-step process where you are receiving information, step one. Step two, internally processing that information, consciously or or like unconsciously, it doesn't matter. But
Sure.
that it does process. And then step three is mentally storing it. And then step four, using it later when you need it. So when I look at learning, I'm looking at it in those four kind of, I guess, steps or stages. You take information
Right.
in, you process it, you store it, you use it. And
Yeah.
that's me, is what learning is. What would you say learning is?
Well, I think one thing we know each other is I love how scientific methody sometimes some of the things that you say comes out,
Yeah, it's
which,
true.
you know,
It's
I
true.
I love the steps. I think that's so helpful for me to hear you talk about. But I think we
I
also
like
know that
steps. I do like steps.
we like
Uh,
organization. It makes us happy. Um, it's
it
also
makes us
stressful.
something.
It makes us something. But,
Uh,
we get to happy at the end of it at
yes,
least.
yes, yes.
But yeah, no, I think the other thing that we know about me is I really love words.
I love
I
words
love
too. Yeah,
vocabulary and
yeah.
defining learning, I think in today's society is a real challenge. So the steps that you made that are so clear is it's really helpful to hear.
I think
Especially
sorry,
in
go ahead.
terms of my definition,
Oh,
like,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
it's gonna be real helpful to know that there are 2 ways to look at this. There's 1,000 ways to look at this, but for your and my
100%.
functioning definitions
Right.
of learning, I said learning to me is an exploration of knowing. It's a
Mm,
wandering of relentless,
mhm.
unbridled curiosity that allows for limitless transformation.
Agreed. Agreed. And I think especially, like, the more intentional you are with your learning, the more that can become the definition that you, like, walk it. You know what I
Right,
mean? And
for
I
sure.
think that's also one of the things that we want to talk about and, like, share with people in this podcast is just, like, that we are always learning,
Right,
but we can always learn intentionally. Like, that we're not always learning intentionally. We are always learning, but
right,
there's a difference between just learning and then intentionally learning. And that's a
right,
very different thing, because I would say I'm with you. Like, I think that when it comes to intentional, those 4 steps I gave, you add intention to each of them, right? So you're seeking out information, like you said, that unbridled curiosity and wandering, so that the exploration of knowledge. I love that idea. And,
yeah,
like, when you're intentional with it, it is so like, you are actively seeking it out. You're or at least
right,
aware that it's everywhere, aware that information's everywhere and you're receiving it. And
right,
then, you're intentional about processing it. How do I process? How do I personally process information best? How do I use that to my advantage? How do I store it strategically so that I can optimally use it later? Right. But
right.
there is a difference between those things because we are always learning, but we're not always learning intentionally.
Yeah,
Right.
and I think that's part of the reason why I chose the word wandering because
Yeah,
there's
that's
no
true.
real
Yeah. I
path or
see that.
plan sometimes to learning. It can
Right.
be aimless or it can be intentional, like you were saying. It can be exciting, it can be challenging, it can be
Right.
arduous, but it's
Right.
always life changing. And I think that's why
Yeah.
the word wandering is really important because wherever you wander, you learn and it changes you.
Agreed. Can I throw a monkey wrench in though? I think
Oh,
you
yeah.
can wander unintentionally, but you can also wander intentionally because it
Yeah, that's
depends on what you're
yes.
looking out for, right? You can always wander, but
Yes.
what your focus is, what you're looking out for, what you are honing in, like all that stuff, that dictates, or I guess would lend itself more to being intentional or not. Because
Yeah,
you
no,
can
I
wander and miss a lot of things. I'm good at that. You can also wander and notice, a lot of things. And I'm good at that too. So I can play both sides of that coin. I think we all can. What we want to talk about and help other people understand is that duality that is within learning. But it is
Right.
always happening, whether you're
Yes.
intentional or not.
And I think that's one of the things that we really found was as we continued to talk about learning,
Yeah.
we also started learning about ourselves, how we used to define learning and how we define it now.
Right.
And one thing we talk about or had talked about before starting the podcast was how essential it is for our personal journeys
Yeah.
to know that there are differences between learning and education and the
100%.
importance of curiosity and how learning really is about transformation and it is
Yeah.
limitless. And to
Yeah.
us, those are really important. I do think it's interesting to like thinking about the elements of learning.
Mm.
You know, curiosity, we both agree is
Right.
probably the main element of learning or one of the
Right.
main elements. And you kind of talked about knowing how our brains work is really important and how we interpret information and what we
Mhm.
know and believe about learning and identifying
Yeah.
failure and how you live and feel about failure. Like you and
Mhm.
I think about failure as a lesson or an opportunity, but a lot of people, when we've had conversations, there's a negative connotation with failure.
I mean,
Um,
let's be honest, like, I mean, I it's a lot easier to feel that way when I'm not the one failing, first off,
sure.
or the one
Sure.
making
Yep.
the mistake.
Yep.
But it's that's definitely something I'm actively working on making myself actually how do I say that?
Like changing your
Own,
mindset.
I guess. Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yes.
yeah. Because I mean, I know it, and I tell other people that, and I believe it, and I encourage other people in that. It's just hard for me to always apply it to myself,
Accept
but
for
it's
sure.
100% true. I'm getting better as we go through, but, yeah, I think in terms of, like, learning like, I love that you said learning is not education. School is not learning, and learning is
Right.
not school.
Right.
Learning happens at school, but learning happens
Yes.
everywhere, right?
Right.
And what we're learning in school through that formal education process, it's not always what the teacher is wanting us to learn.
Right.
But again, learning's always happening. So I think one of the big things from that is also you mentioned like learning ourselves and how we operate and how we work is a big piece of this. It's a big element of learning is like self-awareness, self-acceptance.
Yeah.
And I think understanding that we learning is a lifelong skill. It's a lifelong act. It's something that we are constantly doing. We've done it since
Right.
we were born.
Born. Yeah.
I mean, it's lifelong. Like you will do it forever, whether you are paying attention to it or not. Um, but yeah, I think, we're constantly taking in information. We're constantly processing it, storing it, using it. It might be silly things about the Kardashians. It might be the Pythagorean theorem. It might be empathy, right? All those things are things that we're learning, and
Right.
storing and then using. And that knowing that at each of those stages, there are things that can impact that stage,
Right.
right? Is I
And
think is
that's
really
where
important.
flexibility and vulnerability come in.
Yes. And I
Yeah.
think because I have those as I would list those as elements of learning also. And I think that's one of the hardest parts about learning is the vulnerability of it. Because at
Oh,
this point in
100%.
society, for most of us, in American society, I should say, most people, we have internalized messages from all of our lifelong lifetime of learning,
Yeah.
right? We've learned messages or received messages about ourselves through those experiences. And a lot of us, that's the lens that we use to see ourselves, to see the world,
Right.
is that the messages that we received in those learning situations, because you have to be vulnerable. I mean, you literally are sitting there saying, I don't know.
Right.
You have to teach me.
Right.
I'm going to make mistakes while I learn this.
Um,
And hopefully I learn it. Hopefully I can do it. Hopefully I get to that point of success. Right. And
right.
like, that's a lot of vulnerability.
Oh, it
And I
takes a
think
ton of
creating that
vulnerability.
community of a safe space, like I think community and connection are really important in learning also. Connection
Yes.
to the person that you're learning alongside, learning from, whatever, but also making connections in learning. Like what ideas go together, what concepts, those kind of things.
You
What a
also hinted
connection.
at ownership in learning, which is I
Yeah.
think really important as well.
Yeah.
And I think reflection, like I really believe daily reflection is a huge part of learning. Without
Oh,
taking an
yeah.
account of what you've taken in or how you feel or what you think,
Right.
even if it's 2 seconds in the car
Yeah.
or maybe not 2 seconds, 2 minutes, just 2-minute check-in. Start there,
Yes.
it leads to growth because all
Right.
of a sudden that thinking and learning from whatever you learned today leads to
Mhm.
tomorrow.
Right.
And you're taking it, and like you said, your fourth step or fourth level is use it when you want to.
Right.
So you'll use it when you're ready to apply it,
Yeah.
which also takes a lot of flexibility and vulnerability. I think you're
Right.
100% the vulnerability piece. I think that it definitely is the hardest part of
Yeah.
learning.
Yeah. For me at least, I should say. For me.
I know for
Vulnerability is
no
always the
for
hardest
me,
part, which is what makes
yeah,
mistakes and what we deem as failure. The only failure is not trying. I'm just gonna put that out there for right now. The only
yeah,
failure is not trying. Mistakes are part of a learning process
right,
because you just have to make mistakes. You have to fall down and scrape your knee so that you know when I lean on my bike too far to the right, I fall over. Now I know
right,
to
and
not
you've
do that,
learned
right? Like
something,
you learn, you
right,
adjust, you kind of recalibrate, and you go from there. Um, so
but if you
mistakes
don't
are
get there,
essential to learning. But yeah, yeah, if you cut
right, if
yourself
you
off
don't
from
get
the
there, how are you gonna
opportunity to
find the
make that mistake.
joy? Yes,
And that's the thing too, right? When you are learning intentionally, there is so much joy, so much freedom. And if you are a little bit of a control freak like me,
preach.
right? Okay. If you have a little thing called anxiety, learning, like you said, owning that also allows you to control and own the information that can help you change situations or navigate situations so you don't feel as anxious, so that you can be prepared in those times. You know what I mean? I think that's one of the things I love about learning is that A, you can always do it, you can keep doing it. There's always more to learn, which is
Right,
exciting and fun. But also like that that the fact that you can always learn, like you said, creates the limitless or I mean sorry, unlimited, no, limitless
no,
opportunities
limitless,
for change. That's how you say it.
yeah,
That's your little phrase.
transformation, yeah,
Yeah, like I think it's just exciting. And the more you learn, the more you grow, the more you change, the better you become. All that, well, the more intentionally you learn, the better you
yes,
become, all that kind of stuff. Um, and at any stage of life, right? What we're saying applies to a 2-year-old, applies to an 8-year-old, applies to a 17-year-old, 24, 45,
85,
82, 109,
yeah,
right? At every stage, at every age, at every
every moment,
yeah, thank you. Exactly. Like
yeah,
this is we're always learning and we're always able to just progress, you know?
right.
It's exciting. It's
I
good
like
stuff.
that visual of all the different ages that you were providing because
Mm,
it just makes me think about it was interesting, the visual that I created in my head was just, like, seeing all these different people, at these different ages, but the interesting part about it was I was also thinking about people at those ages that I guess I'll base it off of how I believe that learning is one of the most inequitable entities on a global scale, like it's
right.
tangible
Right.
and it's intangible, which makes it difficult to make it equitable,
Right.
but learning is always
Right.
happening and we're always learning, and I just kept thinking about the inequity piece of it too is
Mm,
and thinking about people who also, like, shut themselves off to learning or won't
yes.
initiate in learning,
Yeah. Yeah.
and I think it's very easy to see those people struggle. I think
Mm,
there that struggle and that challenge and what gets in the way of learning sometimes is also really difficult, and again, we're gonna say it a million times, but, like, learning is not education. Learning's a
right.
journey
Right.
that everyone's on, and it's happening all the time.
Right.
Education is also obviously globally, it's inequitable. It's a lot easier to
Right.
see the that on a global level.
Mhm.
But education is something that happens in a more formal setting, I think. and that's
Right.
another major difference.
And it's pretty
Um,
finite.
what do you mean by that?
I like, at least I can speak like in America, right? There's a certain curriculum that you teach at certain ages that you're supposed to learn it at this certain point. If you don't
Right.
get it here, sorry for you. This is all that
Yeah.
we teach, right? This breadth of knowledge is all that we are going to share with you. It's
Right.
quite limited, really, and not always the most functional. Um, so even that part, like, but information about, the information that is out there to learn is infinite.
Right.
And
Right.
so, like, that's one thing about education too, is that you're only given this much to learn, whereas in reality, there's so much more out there. And like,
Right.
yeah.
Well, that's
Yeah.
kinda actually going back to, like, where we started, that do you remember when we sent out that, like, questionnaire to people that we really, like, love and trusted about what's missing in, like, schools, like, what
Mm,
curriculum is missing?
yes.
And a lot of people, it was really interesting. A
We
lot
had
of
a very
people,
long list.
yes, it was insane, and that's kind of
Mhm.
where this actually came from when you think about it,
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
podcast. Because we realized that a lot of the things that people were saying was missing from curriculum in education,
Yeah.
um, it was a lot of things like empathy, problem
Mhm.
solving, critical thinking,
Self-acceptance,
financial,
self-awareness. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
financial, like, understanding, and this was
Mhm.
all stuff that we had started to sit down and kind of make a curriculum for, but then when we
Right.
thought
Right.
about it, we were like, people are learning
Eh,
this anyway. Like,
exactly.
and if
Right.
they're not learning it, it just goes back to how inequitable learning really is. Not even curriculum, because this isn't
Right.
in schools everywhere.
Right.
It's just how learning looks different for everyone, and how,
That's the thing.
particularly in education settings, the curriculum is even different for people.
Right.
And you could talk about
Right.
like a school that's down the road to another school that's a mile away, and it's different.
Yeah.
Um,
And learning looks different for everyone because we're all different. Not only institution to institution and like, belief to belief, but like the fact that we are all very different individuals. I mean,
right.
I even look at like my siblings. We grew up in the same house with the same parents, with the same influences, all that kind of stuff. And we're vastly different people,
Right.
right? And like not only in our personalities, and you would say, well, you guys had the same experiences, you grew up in the same house, but we internalize them all differently, right?
Right.
And then we are all just have different brains to begin with. We are all born with different brains that are wired differently and whatever. So that's a difference. And then you add in those things together. And yeah, I mean, everyone's different. So learning looks different as it should. Like if you
Right.
are sitting there like, well, I didn't learn, my brain doesn't work the same way Joe's does. And so blah, blah, blah. Yeah, that's exactly right. It doesn't.
And it
That's the end of that
shouldn't.
statement. There's no
Right.
judgment for that. That is a
Right.
neutral statement. Every brain works differently, and that's wonderful because then it's like
Beautiful.
all of the colors in a palette, you know what I mean?
Right.
And or even like Bob Ross's palette where he has like 5 colors, but then
And then
he creates this picture with infinite countless colors because he mixes them together. Like,
yeah.
it looks different for everybody because we all have different paints on our palette, but you can create beautiful pictures no matter what.
Right. Love
Right? Like
that.
we are all given different talents and abilities and gifts, and we all have different challenges and struggles, and like all of that is for good.
Right.
For I think that it's what going back to like everything is learning. We're always taking in these things. We're always taking in messages about our learning with certain judgments or feelings attached to them. Where
Mhm.
the neutral statement is, we all learn differently. That's it. The end. And that's okay.
Yeah.
It's totally fine. But that's why it's important to understand learning. You know what I mean? First off, I think it's
Yeah.
important to know that. Um, and like I said earlier, I think that the way we understand learning and ourselves in learning situations, that's the lens that we use to form beliefs about ourselves. And so I
Right.
think understanding learning is important because it starts with yourself and accepting that. And then the door is open for that limitless transformation that you talk
Right.
about. Like, if someone was to ask you why learning? Why do you think it's important? Like, why would you why did we do
Yeah.
this? Why this topic?
So, it it just came so easily in every conversation that we were talking about,
Yeah.
and I think that that's really why learning. It might be, besides breathing until you don't, the only thing that really happens all the time. Your brain is constantly
Mm.
working, and like you said, our
Mhm.
brains are all working differently, it looks differently, our experiences are different, but I really believe that what I've learned, what you've learned, what everyone is learning currently, it's just so important to understand yourself more to be
Yeah.
able to achieve peace. And I think for me,
Yes.
that's really what it
Yes.
is. That's what this is I don't
Yeah.
walk around um even my neighborhood and see people at peace. I don't and I think if
Mm.
people learned more, and again, this is why learning is
Mhm.
not education in my mind, is
Yeah.
learning. You're taking in everything from the moment you wake up in the
Right.
morning,
Yep.
you see or you
Yep.
hear or you feel or you're immediately taking information in, and
Yep.
then you choose how you're going to wander throughout the day, and you talk about intention. You choose how you're going to spend your day, or you choose how you're not
Right.
going to spend your day, and that's still a choice. And I think
Right.
a lot of it comes back to understanding
Mm.
learning and the impact that learning has on your life.
Yeah.
And I also think in American society, there's this lack of feeling like you're in control because of the
Yeah.
way society boxes people in. And I think it's really important to
Yes.
understand that you are in charge of your learning. You are owning your
100%.
learning.
Yep.
Um,
You
and I,
can do that. You're
yes,
allowed to
and
do that. You have permission to do that. You should do that.
right. And I think
Y
sometimes it's hard for people to think that they can make their own choices,
mm.
unless it's a negative thing, and
Mm.
I just don't believe in that anymore, but I did if you asked me 3 years ago, 4 years ago. Um,
I hear that. Yeah.
I mean, we're very different people even from, I don't know, a month ago.
I was gonna say, right?
And I love
Oh, Lord.
that. I really
Yes.
do. I love that the iteration that I am now is hopefully, potentially only gonna get better because
Right.
I'm being intentional about it.
Right.
And that's not easy, you know? But I think that
No, I
it's
think it
important that everyone starts on their
100%.
journey of learning, like,
Yes.
intentionally. Like, do it today.
Yes. Yeah,
Start out by
join us
asking yourself,
today.
yeah, like, start out by asking
Right.
yourself, like, "What do I believe are the differences between learning and education? What am I gonna
Okay.
intentionally try learning today? When
Yeah.
has learning something encouraged limitless transformation?"
Mm.
Okay, what's a question? What's a
Well,
question that
I
you think
I
people can
think I
start
would
with?
even, like, what do I believe about myself as a learner? What do I
Yes.
know about myself? What have I come 'cause now what do I know about myself? What have I come to believe about myself
Yeah, that's
based on
different.
learning experience in the past? Then, what
Yes.
do I actually know about myself as a learner, right?
Right.
And I know, like, we've as much as I don't always love boxes, I understand that sometimes boxes have a place to help us organize information or, kind of at least start on a journey of understanding something. And so, like, if you have to start with, like, some of those what you'll come to find out later that we don't believe in a lot of these boxes, but if you have to think of, like, I'm a visual learner, I'm an auditor, whatever those things are, like, think about that about yourself. How do you like to receive information? That kind of stuff. But also, yeah, I mean, what is learning? Even just defining that for yourself.
Right.
Um, yeah,
Yeah,
what is interesting to me.
that's a
What did
great
I like
question.
about formal education, formal learning?
Right.
What do I like to learn informally? Like, what's the last thing I learned? Was it a hobby? Was it a new skill of some kind for your work? Was it a new language, something, I don't know. What's the last thing you learned and then how did you go about it? I'd be curious about that too.
That's a oh, I love that one.
It's kind of fun.
Okay, throwing it out to you. What's the last thing
Yeah.
you learned?
So that's a really good question. Well, already a lot today in this conversation. But like the last thing I set to intentionally I started doing watercolor recently, and that's kind of fun
Oh my gosh, yeah.
because it's a whole lot of just learning how to not make a mess is what I feel like I'm doing.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, and I'm trying to think. I know that I learn constantly, and I'm always learning, teaching new things, but now on the spot, nothing is coming to mind.
I
A
know.
lot of mine are like hobbies. I like keeping my hands busy, so a lot of times I'll have something to do with like my hands. Maybe it's like crocheting something or cooking something new or whatever.
Wait, I didn't know you crochet. Whenever I think
Yeah,
of your hands, I always think of you, like, making bread or
I do
something
that
yummy.
too. I love making bread. That's true. But yeah, my hands just have to be busy. So sometimes we'll sit and watch TV and I'll do. Now, listen, I don't have the patience for big crochet tasks. I'm very good at making like dishcloths, like very functional, quick things around the house. But yeah, I don't know. What's the last thing you think that you've learned, or that you would say you've learned
Um,
intentionally? I
gosh.
should add that on there.
Yeah, I know a lot about sports and, like,
Nice.
I've coached and stuff like
Yeah.
that,
Yeah.
but, um, there are some sports that I don't know as much about or I don't know the history of, so I've kind of been delving a little bit
Curling,
more into that. What was that? Curling?
badminton.
Oh,
Yeah.
no, I love badminton.
I love
Can we
badminton
just
too. I just don't know, like, the
Oh, you
history of
do?
it. I don't
Oh,
know
yeah,
all the
yeah, no,
rules or anything either, but that's a fun game.
no,
Do I play it
it's
correctly?
so fun.
Probably not, but I love the idea of it and trying to play it. That's
So
fun.
we had a badminton unit in high school, and it got so
Fantastic. Okay, can I
competitive.
tell you that I know now that you meant, like, a unit in the PE curriculum is what I'm guessing that you meant, but what
Yeah.
I first pictured was, like, a military unit. "We're the badminton unit," and I was like, "Y'all fierce out there in your badminton. That's brave. I never knew badmintoners." Badmintoners? Sure.
Oh,
I didn't know
don't know.
badmintoners could be so intense. That's
Oh, yeah,
funny.
no, it's super intense.
That's great.
Super
Great.
intense.
That's hilarious.
There's also, uh, a game that I used to like to play, called Totem with, just family members and stuff.
Yeah.
It seems like it's making a resurgence. So I never played it correctly intentionally because the way I used it was typically with younger learners. So I just went back and actually got it as a gift for a friend for their birthday recently and was like
That's fun.
relearning how to actually do it correctly according to their
Nice.
directions and intent.
Nice.
Um, but just goes to show you how my brain works. I'm like, oh, you have
I love it.
directions? Let me not follow those.
Right? That's hilarious.
Oh,
I'm trying to think of other things like even like foreign languages, I love learning languages, but
oh,
oftentimes a lot of things will be like today actually, I was just I know that like romance languages have they all come from Latin, so they all have similarities and blah 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 blah. But just
yeah.
today I was thinking about like certain words in Spanish and French or Spanish and Italian and like how the overlap and I was like, "Oh, that really is interesting." And then just like, I don't know, all those I like you said earlier about language. I love languages. I love language. I love the rules of language.
Oh, yeah, no, I don't.
I
Not
hate
that one.
rules.
I was
I
following
hate
you.
rules, but I love
Hyped.
rules.
I know, yeah. I definitely have that love-hate relationship too, but
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Because I like patterns, and so rules in languages are patterns, and so that's why I like them.
yeah.
But
That's
yeah, it's
funny that you
interesting.
say that. I was just looking up colors in Italian and Spanish legitimately, like, can show you my search history last
That's
night because
hilarious.
I love names. Like,
Ah, yeah, yeah, yeah.
names is, like, a huge thing for me. Um,
Nice.
so I was like, "Oh, okay, like,
I mean,
interesting that these colors it wouldn't seem like it all connects, but that's kind of funny the funny thing about my
that's
brain.
so funny.
You talk about sometimes how
Everything
our brains are
connects.
like constellations,
Yes.
but it all connects. I love when you said that. But,
Ugh,
yeah, it's
definitely constellation.
it's interesting up there. in my brain. I'm
It's
still
fun
learning more
times.
about it.
I'll tell you what, like, it never a dull moment up there in the old noggin for me anyway. If it
That's
is a dull
for
moment, like,
sure.
you should be worried,
Yeah.
but because 'cause I'm plotting your death. No, I'm kidding. Um, I don't mean that because that would still be work, so it's
Yeah.
that would not be a dull moment, that'd be exciting. But, yeah, or
Not that you
even,
think
like,
about that.
how no, no, no. We even like how we talked about just, like, the creatures that we have seen, like, make up that are running our brains.
Oh,
I think
oh,
that's great too. Like,
what have
mine
you
is
seen recently?
definitely mm, mine is definitely, like, a monkey running around.
Yes, I love that image.
Like, a curious George with more
Oh,
energy
oh.
just going around, and he unplugs the brain a lot of times.
Yes, I love when you say that.
It happens a lot,
Oh,
or he'll, like, hit the switch on the railroad track. You know how, like, there's that lever you can pull and it will connect the train,
yeah,
like,
down a
change the
different
train connection or take
sure.
you down a different path or whatever. I think the monkey in my brain does that a lot too.
See, I was
"Oh,
thinking of
you
a
thought
Mighty
you were
Joe
going
Young.
straight? Silly little rabbit. You're going this way. You're gonna go off on this tangent now." So, yeah, I mean, brains are different. Brains are fun. Exploring them is interesting. That's the thing too, is that I've never met a brain that is not full of potential.
Yes, oh, for
I've
sure.
never met a brain that is incapable of learning. I've
Correct.
never met a brain that isn't interesting, fun, and worth being celebrated.
Yes,
I haven't
ma'am.
met a brain that doesn't have value. I
Yep,
haven't met a person that doesn't have value that's attached to that brain.
truth. Yep,
Um, and I think that learning is essential to that part, right? If I think learning is essential to empathy and it's essential to relationships and connection because when you learn about yourself without judgment, just neutrally out of intentional curiosity, learning yourself and accepting yourself, it opens up a whole new world for you. And now you can relate to other people in a different way. Oh, I'm not alone. First off, you do that too? Cool. That
right,
helps me. And then how do you handle that? Like, and we can learn from each other that way. I, at the end of the day, every single person is able to learn because they're learning constantly, and every single person has value because of their learning potential.
right.
No matter how your brain works, no matter what messages you've received in the past, no matter how many times you fell off that bike, no matter how many times you failed or made a mistake, even if you haven't started yet, because I told you that was the only failure, you're still valuable. And there is still growth for you. There's so much out there. And like, well, at this point, I just want you to join us. You know what I mean?
Right,
Just join us. Let us be that community that will help you cross that bridge of self acceptance and
right.
get excited about learning. Because I think a lot of people, if you're like, hey, let's talk about learning, they're like, no thanks, I'd rather not.
I
Bored.
know.
Or like have a averse reaction because we equate learning with school and that
Yep,
formal education thing.
right,
And I think that if we can all just see that learning is just a neutral thing that happens all the time, then you can own it with your intentionality. And that gives you control and power and
freedom.
freedom. Freedom.
Freedom.
That's
Yeah,
that's the ultimate goal, you know what I mean?
yeah,
As
I
I
mean,
think anyway.
I you always, like, speak life into everything we believe and all the
That's so
things that we're
nice.
thinking about, and I love that. And I'm
Thank
I'm
you.
re just really excited, and I do think for a very long time, at
Me
least on my
too.
journey too, and I know you feel this way, learning was not fun. It wasn't a joy. It didn't seem like you could transform, and I think that the
Mm,
important most important things you said is, um, we're not alone. We're here. We want to share with you so that you know that there are people out there who want to change and want to try and want to do better, and I think that's the really fun part about learning that brings a lot of joy is knowing there's no end to it. There really isn't.
Right.
Um, and I'm just excited to see where our conversations go because
Yeah.
I I mean, this is not where I expected it to go, but I'm super excited and I'm happy about it. Um, I also, in full transparency, I not so secretly hope to hear and maybe see an impact, even if it's just one person's life.
Yeah.
And honestly, today it was mine. It was really cool to just vibe and chat and have a conversation about this stuff because we're so passionate
Yeah.
about it. We love it. We love
Right.
people.
Right.
Um, and I think also to your point, it just really begins with knowing and accepting ourselves. So let's just get started. Let's do this.
Yeah. I'm with you.
Right?
Let's do it. Come join us. Let's explore
Yes.
together.
All
Yeah.
right. See you later.
Later, Gator.
Bye.
Bye. Thanks for listening to Everything is Learning.
We'll catch you next time.